So can you share something, with us? What are the topics you are discussing today, and did you make any agreement?
Yeah, we discuss many things. As you know, we have a partnership with Sinoocean already, and we're talking about how to advance that partnership, both at the project level, implementing the well building standard throughout many projects, and also at the organizational level, whereby our companies are very aligned in the vision of what's needed to expand the well building standard in China. So we're absolutely honored to invite Chairman Li to become a member of our board, of our advisory board. He accepted, which is wonderful. His guidance and wisdom are really going to be a great asset to us as we again look for the right pathways to spread the well standard throughout China. Separately, we have also determined a big pipeline of upcoming projects that will be well certified. So we've agreed on how that will roll out. More details forthcoming, but yeah, we're excited to announce that as well.
I know there are several companies who want to collaborate with Delos, because health is a new trend. So why do you choose Ocean as your cooperative partner? What's your expectation of this cooperation?
Well, we really like the management culture. We like the vision. Sinoocean has taken a keen interest in the well building standard for quite some time now. And we see their dedicated commitment to really redefine real estate. It's more than 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms in a living room for a home. It's more than 100 desks for a commercial interior environment. It really has to do with how the spatial outcomes are placed and are conducive to optimal health for people. We'll be training a lot of the Sino staff at the technical level, at the project level, and at the managerial level, the design level. The important thing here is to have the well building standard, particularly the well AP, expand. We've had several hundred people in the world already take their well AP. We have several thousands of people lined up to do so. We expect to see through the Design Institute at Sino one of the largest networks of well APs to date in China, which is very exciting. But importantly, the well building standard is not exclusive. It's meant for all. We happen to be fortunate to have wonderful partners to really drive this forward and demonstrate to the industry how it's done, and even use the expertise they have to assist other organizations how to get this done. But this is meant to be a standard for everyone's use.
As we know, the concept of well standard was officially introduced into Chinese in March 2015. So I think it's quite new for a lot of Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just introduce a little bit? What is well standard, and in what way you think it will improve humans' health and well-being? Why it is so important?
So we're all becoming very familiar with green building, and if you look at the last 15, 20 years of the green building movement, you'll see that primarily that's focused on energy consumption, environmental impact, more the utilities of a building, if you will. To complement this, we also need to focus on the sustainability of the people inside buildings. And that's really where the well building movement emerged. Getting doctors together with architects and engineers to really better understand how the spatial environment is impacting us. Any indoor environment is having a direct and an immediate impact on your cardiovascular health, your respiratory health, your immune health. The type of lighting that you're taking in during the day is going to impact the way you sleep at night through your circadian optic nerve. So combining medical science with building science finally completes that conversation with regards to what a truly sustainable and healthy building is, not only just for the planet, but also for the people inside of it. We are spending over 90% of our time indoors. Our homes, our offices, our schools. I believe in a lot of places in the world, indoor air quality is even worse than outdoor air quality. So, we need to really pay attention to this. And what better thing to focus on than health and well-being of occupants. At the end of the day, buildings are for people. And we need to best understand how the built environment is impacting the health of people. And that's what the well building standard is all about.
Well, in some interviews you received before, you mentioned that the idea of sustainability and wellness just bumped into your mind, and you spent maybe 4 to 5 years to figure it out because you are not an architect, you are not an engineer, and you are not a doctor, but you have the resource to assemble a team. So, you just mentioned you put a doctor and an architect in the same room. So how did you just make it happen?
Well, I think what we're finding is when people actually take a second to think about this, they say, oh, that's obvious, you're right. How has that been missed? So it has not been difficult to get world-class experts to join this movement. It's got such incredible societal impact potential. It also has such incredible economic potential. When you merge the largest asset class in the world, real estate, $180 trillion of real estate. When you merge that with the fastest growing industry in the world, health and wellness, $3 trillion a year spend, putting those two together is something that can be so economically profound. But at the same time, if we can address preventative medical intentions through the delivery of real estate, something we all use, that has such profound societal impact. So whether people get excited about this because of a social cause or a purpose-driven movement, or whether people get excited about this because of incredible economic potential, it's pretty, we've been blessed, but it's become pretty easy for us to attract very good quality minds to discover what this could be.
Actually, I'm a little bit curious about the standard because you mentioned, this well-certified space can provide, for example, circadian lighting, purified water and air. This is easy to understand. But I read some materials. It also mentioned even nutrition. So how can architectural design change people's behavior?
Great question. So about half of the standard is architectural and structural in nature, and about half of the standard is operational in nature. Okay, how buildings are maintained and operated. And when you think of a category like nourishment or nutrition, it's interesting. You can have design elements that actually impact how people eat or how people consume. One interesting, again, inexpensive way to encourage healthier habits is water. It's important to drink water. It's important to hydrate. But far too often, we find that in an office setting, that the water fountain is stuck in the corner in the pantry that you never see. So simple guidelines in the well building standard, operationally and architecturally, that suggest within X number of linear feet to any workstation, you must have a visible sight line to water. If people see water, they will drink water. I know that if I walk past water, I look and I remember I should hydrate. So it's a very simple design choice, but it can have a huge impact on how people nourish themselves. I'll give you another example. When you think of an operational protocol, cafeterias in schools or cafeterias in offices, the leading cause or one of the leading causes of type 2 diabetes or even obesity isn't necessarily what you eat. It's how much you eat at a time. It's portion control. It's healthy portions. Now, if you look at the size, for instance, in the United States of a dish, a plate, from 1950 till today, it's doubled. the size of a plate has doubled, and that is encouraging people to put more and more food on their plate. So simple operational protocols and guidelines as to mandating the size of dishes that are required to be served in a cafeteria can have a huge impact on how people, again, nourish themselves, encouraging healthy portions and leading to better health outcomes. None of this costs a lot of money. It's getting the medical content into the design and operational conversation to really figure out how to influence behavior, mostly passively, and also how to inspire people to change their habits.
So do you get any feedbacks from the people? Do they really change? I mean, because of the environment?
Yeah, I'll point to one of my favorite examples was CBRE's global headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, which was the first well-certified offices in the world. And they moved several hundred employees into the well-certified space about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And interestingly, they did a wonderful post-occupancy survey that we've made public to the markets, because the qualitative answers were incredible with regards to how people felt about their own health and well-being in the environment, if they would choose to go back and work in a non-well-certified office, which I think 90-something% said no. And that's all interesting to look at as you start to get that qualitative data. But what I really loved was when management, senior leadership called me about a month after the employees started moving in, and they said, the reaction here has been incredible, but there's one thing that I didn't understand, or I didn't anticipate. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, I didn't realize how addictive health and wellness really is. And I said, well, how do you mean? He said, Paul, I constantly now find myself going to work in the lobby, riding the elevator to my floor, and I'm constantly hearing side conversations that my employees are having about how they're changing their behavioral patterns at home because of what they're learning about their well-certified office. And that extension is very powerful. So when you think of implied design and operational guidelines that people can actually learn from and take into their own lives, think about schools. You start sending kids to well-certified schools, and they start to intuitively pick up these better practices, and they start to intuitively demand better indoor environments for themselves. That's a real powerful way to change behavior and to change outcomes.
So do you have any, scientific report, with some data to, evidence-based report?
Yeah. So the well building standard itself is grounded in medical science. Okay, This wasn't just about taking 4 or 5 years to put world-class experts into place to try to identify the various parameters. This is built on 30 years of evidence-based research. Okay, there have been numerous studies on certain aspects of the indoor environment that can drive productivity and can drive better health outcomes. We're actually, the International Wellbuilding Institute is publishing a whole series of what we call the wellographies, which breaks down each categorical element of the standard and really talks about the citations, the medical science, the studies. But what's really exciting is continuing to push the envelope on the science with the opening of, for instance, the Well Living Lab with the world-renowned Mayo Clinic. Now, what this facility is a facility meant to simulate various environments: a kitchen, a bedroom, an infant's bedroom, a commercial office environment. And it's built on Mayo Clinic's campus in the United States, where modular construction practices allow us to move lighting and plumbing and walls and reconfigure environments. Now, it's got all the top sensory technology you could ever dream of built into it: the air sensors, the light sensors, testing for ambient sound, humidity, background noise, mobility sensors, what have you. And it's got all the biometric and biofeedback devices, enabling us to now basically study hundreds of people over the next several years as they're occupying these environments. We're basically having people live there, sleep there, work there, eat there. And we're dialing up and dialing down all of the interventions in the well building standard and getting real-time data on things like respiratory patterns, heart rate variability, inflammation markers, near-term, long-term stress indicators, cognitive patterns. All of this is a body of evidence of exactly what happens to our biology when occupying a well-certified space versus not. So the science will continue to emerge.
Well, for the well standard, I read some Chinese academic papers and also talk with some architects working on well projects, and they tell me it's maybe a little bit difficult to fully adopt well standard in China. Because, for example, maybe the construction cost is way too high, or because of the environment. For example, in Beijing we have smog. People are really worried about the indoor environmental qualities. So can you just introduce a little bit how you are going to apply well standards specifically in Chinese market?
Yep. So here's the good news. Our human condition is universal. Whether you're in Denver, Colorado, in the United States, whether you're in Beijing, China, our biology is the same. So that sets a great foundation to understand that the well building standard can be a universal standard. The standard is designed to be adaptable. We're going through this process in Europe. We're going through this process in Australia, whereby we'll be mapping the standard against local equivalencies, local ratings, local code, to really identify the most efficient way to maintain the intentions of the well-building standard, but make sure that the adaptability exists with regards to the localization and the internationalization of the standard. It takes time. This is not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be dynamic. We feel that the medical vetting of the standard, the 4 to 5 years, was most important to get that right. To a degree, you can certainly map out all the intentions in the well-building standard. How you may get there may differ depending on region. But the process of submitting AAPs, alternative adherence pathways, is what keeps this standard dynamic and is allowing for the local adaptation. It's very intentional. It's exactly as it's designed. And again, we go through the process now of implementing. And that's what's the exciting part as you start to see what may work and what may not work in different regions. At the end of the day, there are various ways to get through the intentions. And it's really that formalized process of the AAP that is going to allow for this internationalization of the standard. To understand the outcomes, to identify the health domains that we need to address through the built environment: cardiovascular, respiratory, immune, sleep, emotional health, all of these categories. But only through practical implementation at the project level, and only through getting wonderful partnerships like the Lend-Lease organization, and here in China, Sinoocean, only through getting these types of partners to implement will we go through that practical process of identifying and mapping equivalencies and making sure that it's adaptable for local regions. But again, as I said, the good news is we all have the same biology. So it's a great foundation to start from.
You served in Wall Street for 18 years.
Yes.
And you left in 2013. So how do you think, the past experience, help you to start the new phase, the next step?
Yeah. Goldman Sachs was an incredible training ground for me. Brilliant minds there. And, constantly being encouraged to think outside the box. I think there's a lot of quantitative training that goes with that, but I do think that also led to us taking our time with this. This was a daunting proposition to even suggest better health outcomes through the built environment. It needed science, it needed evidence, it needed proof. And so that 5-6 year period of assembling thought leadership across architecture, medicine, design, technology, sustainability, that 1.5 year period of putting the well standard through an extensive peer review. This document has been peer reviewed by experts outside of just the normal real estate practice. It's been put through medical channels. That was all part of the training, I think, of really driving this to have or move towards proven outcomes. But I think most interesting to your question, intuitively, you knew this is a good thing, right? If you can introduce preventative medical intentions into real estate, that's a wonderful thing. But putting a Wall Street lens back on this, okay? Looking at it through a Wall Street trained mind, you realize how incredible the economic opportunity is as well. We have the opportunity here to disrupt, to meaningfully disrupt the single largest asset class there is. And to do so with, again, the fastest growing industry there is. Putting those two things together is, again, so economically opportunistic. It just happens to be a very positive byproduct of doing something that we think is so socially beneficial to begin with. But certainly that Wall Street training really kind of put the thought in my head and others to make sure that we took an evidence-based approach here.
What's your expectation of in the future in China?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, the launch of the project in Guangzhou several months back was a great start. We're very excited to see that project come to fruition. I think we're equally as excited to see the launch of and the registration of projects in several other regions. This is meant to be something, again, that should apply to the entire country, and thus mapping out projects that apply not only in southern China but other parts of China is certainly been discussed and will be happening. I think there's open dialogue about continuing to push the envelope on the research and the science with things like the Well Living Lab. So lots of exciting things on the horizon. Lots of things that we'll be continuing to discuss and make official. And yeah, there's a calendar of sequence of how things happen. I also think, again, very encouraged to see the commitment to now get as many professionals inside the organization, inside Sinoocean, to take their Well AP and to be trained, well-accredited professionals. I do think at some point this will become normal building practice, as it should. We're starting to see evidence of that in other countries. We're starting to see large portfolios adopt these on existing buildings. We're starting to see developers commit their entire forward pipeline. We're starting to see organizations say, we will never not build well again. It just has to be normal building practice. It's too important. We're starting to see tenants, large corporations, demand well-certified core and shell buildings for them to take their tenancy and occupancy, mandating that globally. So as you continue to see more and more organizations and people in the industry wake up to the fact that well building really should just be building, just like green building. And as we start to see hundreds and hundreds of projects go through the process, and hopefully then thousands and tens of thousands of projects, we'll be able to, again, continue to push this envelope and demonstrate that this is more informed building science. This is not more expensive building science. Now I want you to consider something. When you think of a building, about 3% of the ongoing cost of a building is its energy usage. Water, waste management, electricity. And that 3% cost input has spawned a $4 trillion industry called green building. Reducing that cost input, okay? Now consider this. 90% of the cost of any building, not 3, 90% of the cost of any building is the people inside of it. Salaries, wages, benefits, productivity, output, healthcare costs, attraction, retention. That 90% cost input represents the economic opportunity for well building versus the $4 trillion industry that is green building. Yes, this makes societal much sense for society. Yes, government should pay attention if we can influence behavior and address prevention through the vehicle known as real estate. But aside from all that, this has such a vast economic opportunity to it. You know, if you can enhance productivity in a building by 1%, just 1%, if a well-certified environment can enhance productivity by 1%, that pays for the entire energy bill of a building. Just a 1% increase. So addressing the well-building component of this, that's a 90% cost input, is something that the industry hasn't really considered yet. And again, through a Wall Street lens, that is really promising. Maybe we'll look back in a decade or two, and we'll look back and we'll say, remember when we didn't consider the human condition? When we were building all of these places, we're spending 90% of our time in our homes, our schools. Maybe we'll look back and say that was as big a miss in real estate as we've seen to date.